You ever plan something so carefully, so lovingly, only to watch it fall apart in front of you? That's exactly where I was that night. I had scrubbed every corner of my new apartment until it smelled like fresh paint and lemon polish. The lights were soft, the kind that makes everyone look a little kinder. I had music queued up, the kind that makes you want to sway even when you're just holding a glass of sparkling water. And I set out plates of food. Too much food, really. Little bites I'd practiced making all week, each one a silent plea. Please come. Please see me. Please be proud of me. The doorbell never rang. At first I laughed to myself. Maybe they were running late. Traffic in Miami is no joke, right? I poured myself a drink, scrolled through my phone, checked the time. 15 minutes passed, then 30. I rearranged the snacks, just to give my hands something to do. Still nothing. I walked from room to room like a host waiting for ghosts. The candles flickered against the empty walls, shadows stretching longer as if to mock me. I kept glancing at the door, every tiny creak of the hallway making me perk up, but the door stayed closed. That's when the questions started. Did I send the wrong time? Did I forget to confirm? Number. I triple-checked those invites. I remembered my mother's short reply. We'll see you then. My dad had said nothing, but that was normal. My brother Lucas? He just sent a thumbs up. So why was I standing alone in this perfect apartment with food cooling on the counter and champagne losing its fizz? I tried calling my mom. Straight to voicemail, my dad too. Even Lucas ignored my texts. A part of me wanted to believe there had been an accident, some emergency that pulled everyone away. But the silence on my phone told another story. And you know that creeping feeling when embarrassment mixes with dread? Like your stomach drops, but your face burns? That's what wrapped around me. Here I was, dressed in my favorite white dress. The one that made me feel like a version of myself I wanted the world to see. And the world, or at least my family, hadn't even bothered to look. I opened my balcony door, hoping the sea breeze would clear my head. The night air was heavy with salt and car horns. Somewhere down the block, music thumped from another apartment, loud voices laughing in Spanish. It was the sound of a party, just not mine. I stood there holding my glass, whispering to no one. Why didn't they come? The clock ticked louder with each unanswered minute. The food began to wilt. My stomach turned at the smell of it. I pulled out my phone again, and that's when the real gut punch came. On social media, a photo appeared. Bright lights, balloons, and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Lucas." My parents were in the frame, glasses raised, smiles wide. Lucas stood in the center, arm around my mother, like he was the sun they couldn't stop orbiting. It was the same night, same hour, same city. They hadn't just skipped my celebration, they'd chosen his. I stared at the screen until the image blurred. My fingers trembled. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. The hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, the faint drip of a candle pooling wax. My party wasn't just empty. It had been abandoned. And right then, standing in that glowing apartment that I had dreamed about for years, I realized the silence around me wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. The question wasn't, where are they? Anymore. It was, why did they never want to be here in the first place? I couldn't look away from that photo. The screen glowed in my hand like it was mocking me. My mother's smile was wide, brighter than anything I'd seen directed at me in years. My father was raising his glass, proud, almost glowing. And Lucas, my younger brother, stood there soaking up the spotlight like he'd earned it, like the whole world owed him their applause. I refreshed the page, hoping maybe I was wrong. Maybe this was an old picture. Maybe this was a memory I'd missed months ago. But no, the caption told me everything. So proud of my boy Lucas. Here's to new beginnings. The timestamp stung even more. It had gone up 20 minutes ago. The same 20 minutes I'd spent straightening snacks and adjusting candles, waiting for a knock that would never come, I scrolled further. Story after story, clip after clip. My cousins were there, my aunt and uncle. Even people I barely knew, faces I hadn't seen in years, had gathered to cheer Lucas on. And me? I was just a ghost in my own family's story. Do you know that sick feeling when betrayal stops being a suspicion and becomes undeniable? It's like someone drops a stone into your chest, heavy and final. That's what spread through me as I scrolled. Each new photo was a nail in the coffin of the night I had dreamed about. I set my phone down on the counter, but the images clung to me. I tried to breathe, but the air in the room felt thick. My heart pounded so loud I thought I might hear it echo against the walls. All I could think was, they chose him again. It wasn't just tonight. Deep down, I knew this was a pattern. The missed birthdays, the quiet dismissal of my promotions, the way every family dinner circled back to Lucas, like gravity itself bent around him. But seeing it this blatant, watching them post their joy for him while leaving me alone with untouched champagne, that was different. The tears didn't come right away. Instead, I felt anger rise first, hot and sharp. I picked up one of the plates I'd set out, tiny tomato tarts, each one carefully baked that afternoon, and shoved it back into the fridge. I slammed the door harder than I meant to, and the sound cracked through the silence like thunder. My phone buzzed again. Another tag. Another smiling face at Lucas's party. I couldn't stop myself. I tapped it. There was Lucas, holding up keys, a big grin on his face. Behind him, a banner stretched across the wall. Welcome home. The cruelest part? It was the same phrase I had written on the little chalkboard by my door. Same words, different meaning. His home was a stage. Mine was invisible. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, and texted my mom, "Where are you?" "Why aren't you here?" No reply. I tried my dad. "You knew tonight mattered to me." Silence. Even Lucas ignored me. The 3 dots never appeared. That's when the tears finally broke. I sat down on the couch in my perfect white dress, the one I'd chosen to feel radiant, and I cried into the emptiness. Not because I was surprised. They'd been choosing him for years, but because some part of me still believed this night would be different. And in that moment, staring at a feed filled with everyone I loved gathered around my brother, I realized something I'd been running from. They never intended to come. By the time I heard the knock, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to answer. My makeup was smudged, my dress felt like a costume, and the candles had burned down to stubs. For a second, I thought maybe I had imagined it. But then the knock came again, soft, almost hesitant. I opened the door, and there she was, my mother. She stepped inside like nothing was wrong, carrying a half-empty bottle of wine. "I couldn't stay long at Lucas's, so I thought I'd drop by," she said, voice light, almost cheerful. I stared at her. The words scraped against me like sandpaper. Drop by. As if this night was an afterthought. Why didn't anyone come? My voice cracked more than I wanted. "I invited you. I asked you to be here," she sighed, like I was the one making things complicated. "Oh, sweetheart, don't be dramatic." Lucas just happened to schedule his party the same night. We couldn't be in 2 places at once. Her calmness lit a fuse inside me. Happened? You mean to tell me it was just a coincidence that his housewarming landed on the exact same night as mine? She shrugged. He's younger. He needs the support. And honestly, Isabella, sometimes you make such a big deal out of these things. It's not always about you. That sentence cut like a blade. It's not always about you. Do you know what it feels like to hear that, when all you've wanted your entire life is for it to be about you just once? I stepped closer. Do you realize what you did? I planned this for weeks. I cooked, I decorated, I needed you here And you chose him again. Her smile faltered, but she didn't back down. You're being unfair. You're successful. You have your own place. Lucas struggles more. We didn't want him to feel left out. I laughed then, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp, bitter. So the only way to make him feel special is to erase me? To leave me standing in an empty apartment while you toast him across town? She shook her head, put the wine on my counter, and muttered, "You always twist things. You always want recognition. Maybe if you weren't so focused on being the center of attention." Her words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my chest tighten, my pulse race. For years, I'd swallowed this narrative, that I was the problem, that I was too sensitive, too needy, too demanding. But tonight, in the silence of my empty home, the truth was louder than her excuses. "It's not about recognition," I said, my voice steady now. "It's about respect. And you've made it very clear where I stand in this family." She finally met my eyes then, and for the first time I saw something crack in her expression. Not guilt, not regret. Just discomfort, like she'd been caught in a lie she didn't want to name. I pointed to the door. "You should go." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I held the door open, and after a long pause she walked out, muttering something about me being ungrateful. The click of the door behind her was final. I stood in the silence again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just emptiness pressing in, it was clarity. The realization that if I kept letting her rewrite my pain, I'd never get free. That night wasn't just a failed party. It was the moment I finally stopped accepting excuses for betrayal dressed up as love. The morning after felt like waking up in the aftermath of a storm. My apartment still carried the scent of food no one had touched, candles melted into sad little puddles, and empty glasses that had never been lifted. I wanted to erase it all, but my body felt heavy, like grief had anchored me to the couch. That's when I heard a different knock, firmer, familiar. I opened the door, and my dad stood there, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes tired like he hadn't slept. He didn't come with excuses or whine. He came with silence. I let him in, and for a moment we just stood there, the air thick with everything unsaid. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Isabella, about last night?" I braced myself, waiting for the same script my mother had recited. That I was too dramatic, that Lucas needed more support, that it wasn't intentional. But his voice carried something else. "It wasn't an accident," he said quietly. "Lucas knew about your party. He planned his the same night on purpose." My chest tightened. Even though I had suspected it, hearing it confirmed was like being shoved into ice water. "On purpose?" I whispered. He nodded slowly. He wanted to take the spotlight. He said you'd be fine on your own, that you didn't need us there." The words hit harder than I expected. Not just because Lucas had sabotaged me, but because my parents had gone along with it. They'd chosen to feed his ego instead of standing by me. I sank into a chair, staring at the floor. "And you let him? You knew what he was doing, and you still went?" My dad sat across from me, his shoulders slumped. "I didn't stop it. Your mother, she wanted to avoid a fight. She said it would be easier if we just supported him. Easier. That word burned in my throat. Easier for who? For them, who couldn't stand to confront the truth? For Lucas, who thrived on being the golden child? It had never been easier for me. It had always been harder. Do you realize what that did to me?" My voice broke. "I stood here waiting, believing you'd walk through that door. Believing, just once, it would be different. And you left me alone to celebrate myself while you celebrated him." He didn't look up. His silence was an admission, a surrender. And in that moment, I saw it all laid bare. The years of favoritism, The unspoken rules of our family, Lucas demanded. They delivered, I endured. That was the cycle. And last night had just been the latest, cruelest proof. The ache in my chest spread into something steadier, sharper. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt before. This isn't just about last night, I said softly. This is about every time you made me feel invisible. Every time you told me to understand him, to step aside for him. I'm done carrying that weight. For once, my dad didn't argue. He just nodded, eyes glistening like he knew there was nothing left to defend. When he finally left, the apartment felt even quieter than before. But it wasn't the emptiness of abandonment anymore. It was the silence that comes after a truth is spoken, heavy but liberating. And sitting there, with the daylight pouring through the windows onto the remnants of a party that never happened, I realized something. I couldn't change the family I was born into, but I could change what I allowed them to take from me. That was the moment I stopped asking for recognition and started demanding respect. The decision to face them didn't come easy. I paced my apartment for hours, rehearsing lines I might never use, torn between staying silent and finally speaking up. But silence had already cost me too much. So that evening, I drove across town, the streets glowing with late summer neon, my heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to claw its way out. Their house looked the same as always. Perfect hedges, lights warm in the windows, the illusion of harmony. But when I stepped inside, the air felt charged, as if it already knew what was coming. My mother sat at the dining table scrolling on her phone. Lucas lounged on the couch, smirking when he saw me. My dad hovered near the kitchen, his shoulders tight, bracing for impact. I need to say this, I began, voice steady though my hands trembled. What you did, choosing his party over mine, wasn't just hurtful. It was deliberate. And I won't ignore it anymore, Lucas chuckled. Oh, come on, Isabella. You're still hung up on that? It's not my fault they wanted to come to mine. That smirk was gasoline. Not your fault, I snapped. You planned it on purpose. Dad admitted it. You wanted to steal the spotlight, and you did. The room shifted. My mother's eyes flicked to Dad, sharp, questioning. Lucas's grin faltered for half a second, then hardened. So what if I did? People actually show up for me. That's just reality. My mother tried to intervene. Let's not make this bigger than it is. But I cut her off. It's already bigger than it is. It's years of being pushed aside. Years of being told to understand him, to sacrifice for him. I'm done with it. The silence afterward was deafening. My dad avoided my gaze, guilt written across his face. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, defensive but unsure. And Lucas? Lucas finally lost the upper hand. For once, he couldn't laugh it off. The confrontation didn't end with hugs or apologies. It ended with truth laid bare, messy and raw. I walked out before anyone could spin it into something smaller, before they could reduce my pain to drama again. As I closed their door behind me, the night air felt different, lighter. I had confronted the storm and survived it. And even though nothing about them had changed, something in me had. Because this time, I hadn't let them rewrite the story. I had written my own. After that night, the silence between us stretched longer than I expected. Days passed with no calls, no texts, just the hollow echo of a family retreating even further. I thought maybe that was it, that the confrontation had burned the last bridge and I'd have to accept the ashes. But then my phone lit up one Saturday morning, a group chat message from my mother. Family dinner tonight, everyone expected, no excuses. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I never saw it. Another part knew this was inevitable. The moment when unspoken tension would either break us or bend us into something new. I arrived late on purpose, hoping to control the stage. The smell of roast chicken filled the air, familiar yet suffocating. Lucas was already there, his grin brittle, rehearsed. My parents sat stiff at opposite ends of the table, as though the furniture itself was a barrier. We ate in near silence until my mother finally spoke. "This family can't keep tearing itself apart." "Isabella, you've made your point, but it's time to move on." I set my fork down slowly. "Move on?" "Mom, you don't get to decide that. You don't get to declare my pain finished just because it's inconvenient." Lucas muttered, "Here we go again." But I held his gaze. "No, here we finally go. You don't get to keep mocking me while everyone else looks away. Not anymore." My father's voice cracked as he spoke. "She's right. We've all let this fester. And Lucas, I should have stopped you years ago." That admission stunned the room. For the first time, Dad didn't shield him. My mother bristled, torn between defense and defeat. Lucas's smirk evaporated, replaced by something I had never seen before: fear of losing the throne he'd sat on his whole life. The breaking point wasn't a scream, wasn't shattered plates or slammed doors. It was the quiet recognition that the old order had collapsed. The hierarchy, the favoritism, the years of imbalance, they cracked right there at that table. I didn't need them to beg for forgiveness. I didn't even need them to change overnight. I just needed them to hear me, to feel the weight of what they'd done. And in that moment, they finally did. The dinner ended without a toast, without resolution, but with something new. Silence that wasn't dismissal, but contemplation. And as I walked to my car under the soft glow of the streetlights, I realized the breaking point wasn't the end. It was the first real chance at rebuilding, on terms that finally included me. The next morning, I thought the storm had passed, but storms have aftershocks. My dad called, his voice low, almost trembling. "Can you come by?" "Alone. There's something I need to tell you." Curiosity wrestled with dread as I drove over. The sun was bright, but the air felt heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. When I arrived, he was sitting on the porch, staring at nothing, his coffee untouched. We sat in silence until he finally spoke. "I knew Lucas planned his party to clash with yours. I didn't stop him because your mother begged me not to make waves. She thought it was easier that way. But the truth is, I've been complicit all these years. I let it happen. I let you feel small." His words landed like stones. I had suspected, but hearing him confess shattered something I didn't even know I was holding. He wasn't just a bystander. He had been an accomplice in my erasure. "Why now?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He sighed, eyes wet. "Because watching you stand up the other night, it woke me up. I realized I've been protecting the wrong child, and I can't live with that silence anymore." The porch creaked as I shifted, torn between anger and an aching relief. This was the apology I had needed my whole life, but it came wrapped in years of absence. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I whispered, "You could have stopped it. You chose not to." He nodded. "And that's on me. But I'm choosing differently now, if you'll let me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it cracked open a door where my father wasn't just the quiet shadow at family dinners, but a man finally willing to face what he had ignored." As I drove away, the confession replayed in my head. It didn't erase the hurt, but it shifted the ground beneath it. For the first time, the blame wasn't only on me for being too sensitive. The truth was in the open. And once spoken, truth changes everything. I thought my father's confession was the peak, but then my mother showed up at my door unannounced. It was late afternoon, the sky painted in streaks of orange and violet. I opened the door, surprised to see her clutching a small tin of cookies, her old peace offering. Her face was pale, her eyes restless, like someone holding back a storm. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I let her in, the air between us thick with decades of unsaid things. She set the tin on the table but didn't open it. Instead, she clasped her hands together, knuckles white. "Your father told me he spoke to you about Lucas, about me." I nodded, silence stretched, heavy and merciless. She swallowed hard. "He's right. I've protected him, always. Not because I thought he deserved it more, but because I was scared of losing him. Lucas has always been fragile in ways you weren't. And somewhere along the line, I convinced myself your strength meant you didn't need us." Her words sliced through me. "Strength?" I said, my voice cracking. "You call it strength when I cried myself to sleep? When I begged you to notice me?" Tears filled her eyes. "I told myself you would survive. That was my mistake. I thought I was keeping the family together, but all I did was drive you away." For the first time, I saw her not as the unshakable wall of favoritism, but as a woman terrified of breaking apart the illusion of family. Her choices had carved deep wounds into me, but they had carved into her, too. "I can't undo what I did," she whispered. "But I don't want to lose you completely. Tell me how to fix this." I stared at her, my chest tightening with both fury and compassion. "You can't fix it overnight, but you can start by admitting the truth. To me, to yourself, to him. Stop pretending this family was ever fair." She nodded slowly, her tears spilling freely now. For once, there was no defensiveness, no excuses, just a mother, broken open by the weight of her own choices. When she left, the tin of cookies remained untouched on the table. It wasn't peace. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was the first crack in her armor. And maybe, just maybe, the first step towards something real. It had been weeks since the dinner and the confessions, and the house still felt like a battlefield where the smoke hadn't cleared. I was exhausted, tired of carrying their secrets, tired of waiting for them to change. So I decided to do something radical. I would reclaim what had been stolen from me, the joy of celebrating my own milestones without apology, without competition. The idea started small, like a whisper. I told a few friends, then a few more. Soon it grew into something I hadn't expected. People offering to bring food, neighbors volunteering their backyard lights, co-workers promising to help with music. It wasn't just a party, it was a declaration. The night of the event, my apartment buzzed with laughter before the first guest even arrived. I strung fairy lights across the walls, laid out mismatched chairs borrowed from every friend I could call, and set up a long folding table piled high with potluck dishes. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real. When the doorbell rang, I felt a flash of panic. What if no one came? What if this ended up like before? Empty, silent, humiliating. But when I opened the door, the hallway filled with familiar faces. Friends carrying trays of food, neighbors holding bottles of wine, colleagues balancing desserts. One after another, they stepped inside, filling the space with warmth that felt nothing like obligation. I raised my glass, nervous but determined. Tonight isn't about what I lost. It's about what I'm building. You are my people, my family by choice. Applause erupted, loud and genuine, and in that moment, I realized something I hadn't dared to believe. I wasn't alone anymore. Halfway through the night, laughter spilling out onto the street, I noticed a shadow lingering outside the gate. My chest tightened. My mother. She stood awkwardly, clutching her purse, as if debating whether to step closer or retreat. I walked over, heart pounding. "Why are you here?" I asked quietly. Her eyes darted to the glowing windows behind me, the sounds of joy she had never created for me. "Your father told me about tonight. I just wanted to see..." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to see you happy. I didn't invite her in, not yet. Instead, I said, "This is my space. The one you told me I didn't deserve. If you want to be part of it, you start by respecting it." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand." And for once, she turned and walked away without demanding, without deflecting. Inside, the music swelled. My friends pulled me back into the circle, and the night carried on, dancing, stories, plates scraped clean, glasses refilled. By the end, I sat on the balcony, watching the lights flicker, the echoes of laughter still bouncing off the walls. I felt something new settle in my chest. Not just survival, but victory. I had reclaimed my party, my story, my place in the world. And the best part? This time, no one could take it from me. I thought the story had shifted, that the balance had finally tipped in my favor. The night of my reclaimed party still lived in my body like a warm ember. I could close my eyes and hear the laughter, feel the press of friends' shoulders against mine, see the lights reflecting in the wine glasses. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't haunted by emptiness. I was surrounded, chosen, lifted up. But peace has a way of being temporary in families like mine. It was a week later when the phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to. "Isabella?" The voice on the other end was low, too familiar, Lucas. My grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I need to see you," he said, almost rushed. "It's important, please." I wanted to laugh, to hang up, to tell him he had lost the right to important a long time ago. But the hesitation in his tone, something brittle, something I'd never heard before, kept me on the line. We agreed to meet at a diner on the edge of town, neutral ground, the kind of place with peeling red booths and waitresses who'd worked there for decades. When I arrived, Lucas was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee, his foot tapping restlessly under the table. He looked different. Not smug, not triumphant, just worn. I slid into the booth across from him, my guard up. "Say whatever you came here to say." He stared at the table for a long time, then whispered, "I think I messed everything up, not just with you, with them too." I almost laughed. "You think?" His eyes snapped up to mine, and for once there was no arrogance. "I'm serious. After your party, Mom won't look at me the same. Dad barely talks to me. It's like they finally see me for who I am, and I don't know what to do with that." I crossed my arms. "So now you come crawling because the crown slipped off your head?" He flinched, but didn't deny it. "I was jealous, okay?" "I always was. You worked hard, you built things on your own, and people actually respected you. Mom and Dad gave me everything, and still I felt like I was nothing. So I made sure you felt small too, because if you weren't shining, maybe no one would notice how dim I was." The words stunned me. For years I had begged for him to admit it, to peel back the layers of cruelty and show me the insecurity beneath. And here it was. But instead of satisfaction, I felt hollow. "Do you expect me to forgive you?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "No. I don't want to lose you completely. I don't know who I am without the rivalry." The waitress came by, refilling our coffees, oblivious to the decades unraveling between us. I sat back, studying him. This was my brother. The boy who used to steal my toys, the teenager who mocked me in front of friends, the man who stole my party. And yet, across from me now, he looked like a child lost in the dark. "I don't hate you," I said finally, "but I don't trust you either. You've burned that bridge too many times." His shoulders sagged. "So that's it? I'm just alone?" The word alone echoed. For so long, I thought I was the lonely one. But maybe we both had been, just in different prisons. "I don't know what comes next," I admitted. "But whatever it is, it has to be different. No more games. No more stealing moments. If you want me in your life, you meet me where I am, not where you wish I'd be." He nodded slowly, tears glinting in his eyes. "I'll try." We sat in silence, the hum of the diner filling the gaps. For the first time, Lucas wasn't my rival, my tormentor, my shadow. He was just my brother. Broken in ways I couldn't fix, but human in ways I couldn't ignore. When I left that diner, the night air smelled of rain. I didn't know if his words meant change or just another cycle. But I knew one thing. The story between us wasn't finished yet. The next week proved that. He showed up at my door unannounced. Not with arrogance, not with excuses, but with a box. Inside, old photos, ticket stubs, a necklace I'd thought I'd lost years ago. "I kept these," he said, his voice cracking. "Even when I hated you, I couldn't throw them away." I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Instead, I let him place the box on my table. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I realized," he whispered, "you were the only real thing I ever had. And I don't want to lose it forever." I stood there, heart torn between the scars of the past and the flicker of something new. Could I believe him? Could I risk it? The answer wasn't clear, but maybe the clarity would come later. That night, lying in bed, I thought about family, the one we're born into and the one we choose. My party had shown me I could survive without them, even thrive. But Lucas's return reminded me that survival and healing weren't the same thing. Healing meant facing the mess, the pain, the impossible choices. And maybe, just maybe, it meant leaving the door cracked open. Not wide, not foolishly, but just enough for light or a brother if he ever learned how to walk through it without taking everything from me again. There's a difference between being seen and being watched. For years, I felt watched, judged, compared, measured against someone else's shadow. That morning, I decided to be seen on my own terms, not through my mother's careful edits or my brother's loud announcements, not through a feed crowded with half-truths and easy assumptions. I would tell it myself, clean, steady, no flames, no names. I made coffee and cleared my table like it was a stage. I set my phone on a small stack of books, taped a sticky note behind it that read, "Keep breathing." The light from the window was soft, the kind that doesn't try too hard. I didn't dress up, a plain sweater, bare face. If the story needed sparkles to land, it wasn't ready. I wrote a few lines on an index card and tossed it. I didn't want a script. I wanted honesty, the kind you can hear in the breath between sentences. I pressed record and stared at the tiny red dot until my pulse slowed enough to be human again. "Maybe you've seen things about me. Maybe you haven't," I began, voice low but clear. "Either way, I want to talk to you for a second. Not to win, not to drag anyone, not to stir more drama. Just to tell you a story about family, boundaries, and the moment you realize love without respect isn't love, you can survive." I paused. No music, no edit. Just the hum of my fridge and the faint city noise that always found its way up to my windows. It felt risky, stepping out without armor. It also felt right. "I threw a housewarming party," I continued, "and nobody came. Not because I forgot to invite them. Not because I changed the date. They went somewhere else, on purpose. And for a while I thought that meant I was unworthy. I thought it meant I had failed some test I didn't know I was taking. I let that sit. I wanted anyone listening to feel the weight of that sentence. I wanted them to think about the times they had stood alone in rooms they prepared for people who never arrived. What I know now, I said, is that other people's choices don't shrink my light. They reveal theirs. And when you chase the approval of people committed to misunderstanding you, you disappear in front of your own eyes. I took a breath and looked straight into the lens, like I was looking into the face of a friend. This is not a call to attack anyone. Please don't send messages, don't name names, don't dig through old photos to prove anything. That's not what healing looks like. Healing looks like telling the truth without demanding a confession in return. It looks like saying enough and then keeping your word. I explained the basics. No details that would identify, no screenshots, no private conversations. I was careful. Not scared, just careful. I'm not here to humiliate my family, I said. I'm here to stop being humiliated by silence. I told them about the empty night, the withheld toasts, the way a quiet apartment can sound like a verdict. I told them about the confrontation that didn't fix anything and the confessions that didn't erase the damage. I told them about the party I reclaimed. Potluck dishes, borrowed chairs, the feeling of being carried by people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they were obligated to. I used to think survival was enough, I said. If I could just keep going, one step after another, I'd be fine. But survival without dignity is just endurance, and I want more than endurance. I want a life where my yes means something and my no is heard the first time. My phone buzzed once. I ignored it. The red dot stared back, bright as a nerve. Here's what I'm choosing, I continued, counting on my fingers. 1, I no longer negotiate my boundaries. 2, I won't accept apologies that require me to shrink. 3, I will not respond to every rumor, every poke, every bait. Silence can be strength when it protects peace, not denial. 4, I will keep telling my story, but I won't tell yours. You can do that yourself. I thought of my brand partner and the cautious email I'd received, the one asking for clarity, the one that felt like a polite threat. If you work with me, I said, still steady, you're supporting someone who believes in accountability, privacy, and kindness. I don't weaponize audiences, I don't send mobs, I ask for space to work, and I give that same space back. If that's not enough, that's okay. I won't beg to be respected. There it was, the line in the sand. Not bitter, not angry, just the quiet firmness of someone who knows the price of peace and is willing to pay it in self-respect. I spoke to the person who might be listening at 2 in the morning with swollen eyes and a knot in their chest. If you're waiting for a family's approval to feel real, I said, please hear me. You're already real. You're already enough. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is build the life you deserve without the audience you imagined. I ended with gratitude, genuine, unornamented gratitude. For the neighbor who loaned chairs, the coworker who brought dessert, the friend who refused to let me quit. I said thank you to the people who show up without being asked twice. I reminded anyone watching that boundaries aren't walls against love. They're the doors that make love safe to walk through. I stopped recording and sat very still. The room felt different, lighter, like I'd opened a window I'd kept shut for years. I watched the video back once, checking for heat where I wanted light. It held. Even when my voice trembled, it never curdled. Before posting, I typed a short caption, for anyone who has ever felt invisible at their own celebration. Here's what I learned. No tags, no names, no bait. I pressed publish. For a minute, nothing happened. Then the screen blinked with the first comment. I stood in an empty room too. Thank you for saying this. Another. I kept throwing parties for people who never brought chairs. I'm done. Another from a name I didn't recognize. Your calm is louder than their noise. I didn't chase the comments. I set the phone down and cleaned the table. I folded the sweater draped over a chair. I watered the basil plant on the windowsill. Ordinary movements, steady and small. The algorithm could whirl without me. I had already done the only part that mattered. An email popped in from my brand partner. Subject line, thank you for the clarity. Inside, we appreciate your approach and will proceed as planned. Let us know how we can support your boundaries in future content. I smiled, not because I needed the validation, but because it confirmed a truth I was still learning. When you stop performing for approval, the right audience finds you anyway. Later, I took a walk to the edge of the water. The sky was rinsed clean by late light, and the breeze tugged gently at the loose strands of my hair. A jogger passed, a couple argued softly, a child threw crackers to birds that had no intention of sharing. Life, unbothered, moved around me. My phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then opened it. "I saw your video. I'm proud of you." No name, but the rhythm gave it away. My father, brief as always, careful with the words he finally learned to spend more wisely. Another thread pinged, a long paragraph from my mother, clumsy, slow, trying not to undo itself as it went. I watched. "I'm thinking about what you said. I don't agree with everything, but I hear you. I want to try." I typed nothing back. I let their messages sit. Not as punishment, but as practice. I didn't need to rush to soothe them, to prove I wasn't making trouble, to mop up their discomfort. That was never my job. My job now was to anchor myself. On the way home, I passed a shop window and caught my reflection. Not the polished version I used to present. Just me, wind-tangled hair, soft sweater, eyes that had learned to hold their own light. I didn't look triumphant. I didn't look wrecked. I looked like someone who could go home and sleep through the night. That felt like a win worth more than any public truce. Back upstairs, I brewed tea and sat beside the phone I no longer feared. The video kept moving, comment by comment, message by message. I didn't need to track every ripple. I had already stepped out of the boat and onto the shore. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who edited herself to fit chairs at tables that never had a seat for her, the one who believed endurance was love. I wished I could hug her. I wished I could tell her, "You were never too much. You were just in the wrong room." I turned off the lamp. The apartment settled around me, not as a stage, not as a courtroom, but as a home, mine. Not because anyone finally said I deserved it, but because I said so and then lived like it. People think owning your story is loud. Sometimes it is. Tonight it was quiet. It sounded like breath. It felt like rest. And it looked like a woman setting down the weight that was never hers to carry in the first place. I thought posting that video would be the end of it, a full stop where I finally owned my story. But life online doesn't work like punctuation. It ripples, it echoes. Sometimes it roars back louder than you expect. The next morning, I woke up to hundreds of notifications. The video had spread far beyond my circle. Strangers shared it with captions like, "This is exactly what I went through," or, "Finally, someone said it." My inbox filled with confessions from people I'd never met. Teachers overlooked in their schools, siblings pushed aside for golden children, partners erased by louder voices. I read until my eyes blurred. Each story was a mirror, fractured but familiar. And for the first time, I felt less like a lone voice and more like part of a chorus that had been waiting for someone to sing first. But then came the other side. A handful of comments questioned my motives. "Are you exaggerating for sympathy?" "Family drama should stay private." And one that cut sharper than the rest. "Maybe they skipped your party because you're just not worth showing up for." My chest tightened, old doubts clawing at the door. But I remembered what I'd said in the video. Other people's choices don't shrink my light. I closed the app, made breakfast, let the kettle whistle fill the space instead of their words. By afternoon, messages from extended relatives started trickling in. A cousin wrote, "I saw the video. I always knew something was off." An aunt, braver, admitted, "We should have spoken up sooner." And then, the one I had dreaded, my brother. Lucas's text was short. "So you had to drag me online now?" I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't used his name. I hadn't revealed details. But guilt still burned, not because I'd exposed him, because I knew he was right in one way. He was part of the story whether I said it out loud or not. I typed back carefully, "I told my truth, not yours. If it feels like a mirror, maybe ask why." He didn't reply. That night, I walked past my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I caught the faint smirk at the edge of my lips. Not triumph, not cruelty, just recognition. The aftershock online was real, but so was the calm inside me. The video wasn't a weapon, it was a release. People could twist it, argue about it, dismiss it, but the truth remained, steady as my own breath. I had finally said what needed saying, and once truth is spoken, it can't be unheard. You never really know who's been watching until the moment they step forward. After the video spread, I braced myself for silence from my extended family, the kind of silence that's thicker than words, that says, "We saw, we know, but we won't say anything." I thought maybe the cousins, the uncles, the aunts would retreat into the safety of small talk and weather updates. But then an email landed in my inbox with a subject line that froze me. From Emma. Emma was my cousin, my mother's sister's daughter. We grew up like sisters, inseparable until high school pulled us onto different paths. She was always the one who laughed loudest, who believed rules were suggestions, who slipped notes into my locker when I was crying and wrote things like, "You're not invisible to me." But somewhere along the way, the family hierarchy swallowed her too. She stayed close to my mother, close to Lucas, and I convinced myself she had chosen her side. The email began, "I watched your video 3 times. I don't know if you'll even want to hear from me, but I need to say this." I sat down, palms sweaty, reading every line as if it might vanish if I blinked. She admitted she had seen the favoritism for years. She wrote about dinners where she noticed my chair half empty because I'd slipped away, unnoticed, while everyone praised Lucas. She remembered holidays when gifts for him stacked high, while mine sat small and solitary. She confessed she had wanted to speak but stayed silent out of fear of my mother's wrath, of being shut out like me. And then she wrote, "Your video reminded me of the girl who used to share secrets with me under the covers, who dreamed big even when no one else believed in her. I should have been there. I wasn't. But I want to be now if you'll let me." My throat tightened. All the years of thinking I had no allies in that branch of the family suddenly cracked open. I reread her words, my heart thudding with equal parts relief and suspicion. Could I trust her? Was this guilt speaking or genuine courage? I typed back slowly, "Thank you for saying this. I'm not ready to forget the years of silence, but I'm willing to talk. Meet me?" We met at a coffee shop downtown, one of those places with exposed brick walls and indie music humming in the background. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Older, sharper, but her eyes still carried the same spark of mischief. She hugged me like no time had passed, but I kept my arms stiff at first. "I deserved that," she said with a small smile, sensing my hesitation. "But I'm here. No more hiding." We sat down, lattes steaming between us. I didn't waste time. "Why now, Emma?" "Why after all these years?" She stared into her cup. "Because watching you tell your story lit something in me. I realized I've been complicit. I thought staying neutral kept me safe, but really, it just made me a bystander to your pain. I can't undo that, but I don't want to carry the guilt anymore. I want to stand with you, even if it's late." Her honesty cut through my defenses. I leaned back, exhaling. Do you know how many times I wished for someone to just say they saw it? To say I wasn't imagining it? Her eyes welled. "I saw it. We all did. We just didn't have your courage." For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight in my chest shift. Not gone, but lighter. Having someone from inside the family confirm the truth felt like a validation no online comments could give. But I also felt something else. Anger. Anger that it had taken so long. Anger that she had chosen comfort over loyalty when I needed her most. I voiced it. "You left me alone." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I did. And I hate myself for it. But please don't let my cowardice then erase what I'm trying to do now." The coffee cooled between us as we sat in the rawness of it. And then, slowly, I reached across the table, resting my hand on hers. "Okay, then prove it. Don't just say you're here, be here." From that day, Emma became something I didn't know I needed. An ally who understood both the wound and the source. She didn't defend my mother's choices. She didn't excuse Lucas. She just stood beside me, sometimes silently, sometimes with words that reminded me I wasn't crazy, wasn't alone. At work, when doubts gnawed, she'd text, "Remember, you're not the invisible one." When family whispers started circling, she'd call, "Let them whisper. You're still shining louder." It wasn't a repair of the past, but it was a patch for the present. And sometimes that was enough. Late one night, after hours of talking, she said, "You know, Isabella, telling your story didn't just free you, it freed me too." I realized silence was my cage. You broke it open. I went to bed that night with her words echoing. For years, I thought I'd been fighting this battle alone. But maybe my story had built an army I couldn't see yet. An army of people ready to step out of the shadows once someone dared to speak. And maybe that was the real twist. The unexpected allies show up not before the storm, but after you survive it. When the wave of support began, I almost forgot there was another side to the tide. But tides turn, don't they? And soon, the backlash came crashing in, louder than I expected. At first it was subtle. A cousin unfriending me on Facebook. An uncle refusing to respond to my texts about an upcoming gathering. A family group chat suddenly going silent the moment I joined. It felt like the room went dark whenever my name appeared, as though my presence carried a kind of contamination. Then came the messages. Anonymous accounts, probably family under fake names, left comments like, "Air your dirty laundry in private, not online." Others accused me of exaggerating. Some said I was ungrateful, that plenty of people had it worse, that I should count my blessings instead of whining. And worst of all, "You're tearing the family apart." That one stung. Because for years, hadn't I been the one stitching myself into invisibility just to keep the peace? Hadn't I been the one carrying silence so the family wouldn't fracture? And now, when I finally spoke the truth, I was the destroyer? Emma stood by me, reminding me, truth doesn't break families, lies do. Still, I lay awake at night, scrolling through comments until my chest felt tight, until the words blurred into static. My heart raced with each ping of a new notification, never knowing if it would be encouragement or attack. The hardest part wasn't strangers doubting me, it was people who shared my blood. Aunt Margaret wrote an email dripping with disappointment. "You've embarrassed us all. Whatever issues you had should have been kept between family. Airing it online is disrespectful to your parents' sacrifices. The word repeated in my mind like a drumbeat, as if enduring neglect was a price I should have paid silently out of gratitude. As if my pain wasn't valid because it came packaged with food on the table, clothes on my back. I wanted to scream back, love without respect isn't love. Sacrifice without acknowledgement isn't grace. But instead, I closed the email and stared at the ceiling until morning. At work, I kept smiling, but cracks showed. A coworker asked, "Rough week?" And I almost laughed. Rough didn't cover it. It was like trying to walk upright in a storm that bent trees sideways. Still, I refused to delete the video. Every time doubt crept in, I'd go back to the comments from strangers who said things like, "I thought I was alone until I saw your story." Or Emma's late-night texts that reminded me, they're loud because you touched a nerve. Keep standing. But backlash has a way of sneaking under your skin. One night, Lucas himself messaged me. His words were venom wrapped in civility. You've always envied me. Now you're trying to ruin me. This won't end the way you think. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. Part of me wanted to reply, to unleash all the years of silence into one furious outpour, but another part knew better. Engaging him would be like feeding a fire gasoline, so I blocked the number. My hands shook, but I told myself, this was control. This was choosing not to let him pull me back into his game. The next family dinner I attended confirmed the split. Half the table smiled politely but avoided conversation. The other half whispered when I excused myself to the restroom. I caught fragments. Attention seeker, ungrateful, drama queen. I returned to my seat, chin high, though inside I burned. Emma leaned over, whispering, "You're braver than any of them." Her words steadied me just enough to make it through dessert. Later that night, I sat in my car outside my apartment, headlights cutting through the dark, and asked myself, was this worth it? The loneliness felt heavier than before, sharper now that the lines were drawn. But then I remembered the girl I used to be, the one who cried silently in her room while the world praised Lucas. If I deleted the video, if I went back to silence, wasn't I betraying her all over again? So I stayed the course. Even as whispers grew into accusations, even as invitations stopped coming, I reminded myself, backlash isn't proof you're wrong. Sometimes it's proof you hit the truth too close to home. And in that strange, painful storm, I discovered something else. The louder the backlash, the clearer I heard my own voice. For the first time, it didn't tremble. It didn't apologize. It simply said, "This is my story, and I won't take it back." That night, I closed my laptop, silenced my phone, and let myself sleep with a strange kind of peace. Because maybe storms don't exist to drown you. Maybe they exist to prove you've learned how to stand. They say closure is a destination, like a city you arrive at after a long journey. But for me, it felt less like arrival and more like acceptance. A steady breath after months of holding my lungs tight. It began one quiet Sunday morning. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting golden stripes across my living room floor. I sat with a cup of coffee, scrolling through old photos I hadn't touched in years. There was one of Lucas and me as children, grinning at the camera, our hands sticky with melted popsicles. For a moment, I remembered what it was like before the comparisons, before the resentment hardened into armor. Just two kids sharing summer, and then I realized I didn't want to carry his shadow anymore. Closure wasn't about winning against him, or even proving my worth to the family. It was about releasing myself from the role I had been assigned. The quiet, accommodating sister who swallowed pain so others could shine. I whispered aloud, as if to seal it. "I don't need your approval anymore." The turning point came unexpectedly during a community event Emma invited me to. A panel on resilience held in a small library basement. I almost didn't go, still wary of crowds, of eyes that might judge. But Emma insisted, and I'm glad she did. Because when I spoke up, sharing just a fragment of my story, strangers nodded. One woman's eyes welled with tears. Another whispered, "That's me." In that moment, I felt it, the power of truth when it's no longer hidden. Lucas tried once more, sending a final message through a cousin. "Drop this act. You're making a fool of yourself." But his words no longer held weight. They fell flat, like paper darts against a brick wall. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Silence this time wasn't suppression. It was strength. The family remains divided. Some still keep their distance, others cautiously reach out, and that's okay. Closure doesn't mean every relationship is mended. It means I've stopped bleeding myself dry trying to earn love where it isn't freely given. What surprised me most was how light I felt once I stopped fighting to be believed. I had been measuring my life against Lucas's shadow, against my parents' expectations, against society's script of what a good daughter should be. The moment I laid down those weights, I stood taller. My voice grew steadier, and oddly enough, I laughed more. One evening, Emma asked me, "Do you regret posting the video?" I thought long and hard, then answered, "No, because it set me free." Even if it cost me comfort, it gave me clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is worth more than approval. Closure, to me, is now this: choosing peace over performance, choosing to love myself without waiting for permission, choosing to build a life that isn't a reaction to someone else's dominance. So here I am, telling you this, not because I've solved every problem or healed every scar, but because maybe you've been carrying your own shadows too. Maybe you've been waiting for the right time to speak, to step out, to reclaim your story. Let this be your sign. You don't have to wait. You don't have to shrink, because family may not always give you closure. The world may not apologize, but you can give yourself permission to close the chapter, to write the next one in ink of your own choosing. And as I sip the last of my coffee, watching the sunlight stretch across my floor, I realize something simple yet profound. Closure isn't the end. It's the beginning I never thought I deserved.